Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Zac Congonis. We are here to bring you the best solutions to your lifting problems. Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
Let's just launch straight into it. Hit your stride. Hit us with what you got this week. Last week was pretty full on.
Look, I don't think this week's going to be any better, to be completely honest.
Oof, I don't know whether I like the sounds of that, but okay.
So, I mean, working from home and being able to realistically not have a uniform, how many check-ins are you porky pigging it for? Because for me, it's essentially 100% of them.
What the fuck? Oh, man. I'm glad our clients can just enjoy that image when they're reading their check-ins. And, you know.
Look, looms.
What about Zoom videos?
Yeah,
I was going to say, from the loom videos, just... oh, hey, just let me demonstrate a squat for you. You're doing this wrong.
Well, genuinely, sometimes... sometimes I have to try and sneakily pause the loom with the hotkeys to put some pants on to then demonstrate an exercise. No,
I can absolutely say that there is not one check-in that I've done nude.
Seriously?
The only time I'm nude in a day, you brought up the bedtime nude thing. It just seems to me at this point you're just a nudist because
have you not seen
think other than having
Instagram
a shower?
Stories? I'm always naked.
Other than having a shower, I don't think I'm not walking around nude.
Even then, Will goes and gets changed in another room, so I don't see him nude.
I'm just like,
he did it last night. I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like,
you don't just.
He goes into another room. He's like, "Well, you don't need to see everything."
Just walk around unholstered.
I do that all the time. I was like, "What do you want me to not walk around?"
Put that away.
I'm just picturing like this little leather holster you've got strapped to your inner thigh that you like slip your knob into.
It's for his his insulin pump.
What?
Your holster.
No.
No, Will actually goes into another room to get changed. He was complaining I was complaining last night. I'm like, why do you go to another room? He's like, because no one needs to see that. I was like, so I walk around the house naked all the time. Do you want me to stop? He's like, yes, it's really rude.
But do whatever you want. Do what pleases you. All right? Yeah, so all the clients out there, who are working with Zac, feel free to... Yeah, just keep that in mind while you're
appreciate Will's professionalism.
While you're watching your looms. If you see any sneaky little
slow pauses,
sneaky pauses, you know exactly what is going on now. But
I still like.
I don't have a whole lot to say.
That still made it for me.
I have been hitting the training more, very consistent. In all of my training, I think the only thing I've done is changed it from 5 days back to 4 days because I just had weddings. We have a few comps coming up. I'm coming down there. I've got a few things on that are taking away my weekend, so pulled it back to 4. But all I did really was that 5th day, which was just a pure hypertrophy leg day, split it up and so rather than my deadlift session now being deadlifts and biceps, it's deadlifts with, I think, some back extensions and biceps or something like that. It's just taken all the exercises and the volume for the quads, hamstrings, adductors, whatever, and just spread it out throughout the other sessions. So, I did bench the other day, and that's why you would have seen maybe on Instagram, if you follow me, that I did leg press and leg curls after the bench press. So spread it out. But other than that, I'm moving forward. I'm feeling as strong as I have in a really long time, which is exciting because we're still ages away from comp. I'm losing weight too. I'm in a deficit, down from 116 in a bit to 114 and a little bit this morning in a matter of a couple of weeks. So as long as I keep on that path, hopefully I end up in that 112, 113 area, and then probably pull up the dieting there for a little bit. Rethink, recalibrate based on the timeline, and go through that process a couple of times before Pro Raw comes around so that I can comfortably be at 110. Because unlike Breakthrough or some of the other comps, it's a 2 hour weigh-in, so it's a bit of a thing that you need a long if you're not thinking about, if you're well over your weight class for a 2 hour weigh-in at, well, for me, 6 months out, but at, at least 3 months out, you should really be on top of that, because we have a lot of clients who are like, oh, I'm 2 weeks out and 5 kilos over my weight class. I should start doing something about this. Just go into a gigantic...
You're 5 kilos into your new weight class.
I should say that we don't have clients that do that.
Sometimes.
Only one particular client.
Some people.
If she's listening to this, I'm going to kill her.
Just who is it?
Keita. I wasn't going to say it then. I'm like, nah, actually, we'll just straight call her out.
Nah, fuck it. I reckon comps would be way more interesting if they were all 2 hour weigh-ins.
Yeah, I'd be totally down for that. I think it would force people to go up, for records to be a little bit more just transparent, I guess. Like when I went and competed in America, it was a 24-hour weigh-in, but like some people rocked up at the 24, like at the weigh-in time 24 hours before, like looking like they're on their deathbed, like getting dragged in by their mates, can hardly stand, walk, weigh in, like just flop onto the scales and just go, and then they get dragged away and into the IV room where they just pump themselves, go to sleep because they can hardly stay awake, and then just pump themselves up with IV, which, again, not cheating. It's within the rules. If you want to be the best, do the best stuff. But, it does make it hard when these people are sitting 10, 15 kilos above the weight class, and then the people who aren't privy to that or don't want to do that extreme, they're trying to compete and don't have that luxury, I guess, if you want to call it a luxury. But it just skews the weight classes a little bit. But it's the same in other sports. The problem is, like, if you change the rules, people are always going to push extremes regardless. So if we say, it's only 2 hour weigh-ins now, then we're going to get people still cutting weight, but now they're going to have a much harder time rehydrating. So there's an argument there for health. But, there are some bigger, I know some MMA organizations and stuff like that do hydration testing, where they will actually just do a hydration test at, I forget how far out, but like pretty close to the comp, and you have to pass that along with making your weight class, obviously. So something like that would be fantastic, but we're talking powerlifting here, a community driven for the most part, people throwing money out of their own back pockets to run these things and usually losing money on these big comps. So I doubt we're going to see that implemented soon. I doubt we're going to see full comprehensiveness across the board on that stuff. But, I agree with you. If we could implement something like that, I would be all down for it. Anything else? Anything on your training? How's your training going? You still messing around? You still throwing bars over your head?
Still messing around. Yeah. We're looking at doing a small peak for the Ollie stuff. I'm thinking about signing up for a comp for powerlifting coming into the start of next year. So want to max out the Ollie shit.
The champ returns.
It's hardly called a verse if I decimate him. But so the goal will be to max out Ollie, then do a full dunk, and then do a powerlifting comp. We've got the
full dunk.
Yeah, me and Brendan are doing some random dunk program he found online.
Okay.
So we're going to try dunk.
That's the first I'm hearing about that.
That's a new one. That's a new one.
Yeah.
It changes every week.
Concurrent.
It's or just call it stupid. I mean, I just really want to dunk a basketball. Imagine putting that in a reel.
Yeah, some would argue that and we talked about this, Brandon, in his episode, but there are qualities of that you train for. When you're going to do powerlifting, you go super specific and you get really good at that, and you maybe not get so good at other things because you can't train them as much. You can't put as much effort into them. Sometimes the weightlifting stuff opposes it, and it can be hard to juggle. Hence why I find those super total meets pretty impressive to the people that can do them both really well. Most of them are specialists. They're like a powerlifter that kind of half does the Ollie lift.
There's like a 60 kilo snatch, 100 kilo clean and jerk. That has a fucking 900 kilo powerlifting total.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the most of the people that enter those things, I think. But I've never heard of adding a dunk in there as well.
I mean, I'm a fairly springy boy. I feel like I'm close already. It won't take much.
Just lower it down. Just
use the kids ring to start off with.
if you change the angle when you film it, you won't be able to tell how high the ring is.
Exactly. Film it from like
That's the
very,
secret.
very low.
Yeah.
I mean, my entire lower leg is all Achilles, so it should be fine.
No calves.
No calves.
That's
fucking
the
Achilles.
excuse.
That's it. Makes you springy.
Let's talk about our topic for today. So it is another question that we have written in. So thank you to Charlotte for writing in. She gave us some nice compliments, which I like.
Training human, doing the ollie things and the powerlifting things. The community's growing.
Excellent. Love it. Yeah.
She's competing soon.
She certainly is.
Yeah. Gave us some nice compliments. Loving the podcast. You guys explain things really well and make me want to learn about why I'm training the way I do rather than just putting all my trust in Zac.
Even though that's a fantastic option.
So, so love that. Keep that coming. And then the question was, would love to hear more in depth of why, how, and when to do stretching / mobility and how it affects recovery / performance. I personally use GoWOD, which I don't know. I haven't used that. Have you?
I've looked at it before. It's legitimately just like, imagine CrossFit WODs, but for stretching.
Okay. Yeah, I can picture it. So I personally use GoWOD, which you can input exercises and it develops a pre or post routine. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective. So essentially talking about, stretching and it's how it's applicable for within strength sports for us in powerlifting in particular, and mobility, flexibility, like all these words that get thrown around. Now it's a really hard topic to talk about, and when we first got that question, I was a little bit hesitant to tackle it because it's another one of those things that it requires a lot of context. Like, if you were to come to me and say, like, hey, what mobility should I do? And, should I do stretching or not? And blah, blah, blah. Then I'd be like, okay, well, like, what are your goals? Well, your goals are to dunk and do snatches and do powerlifting. So you're a bit of a fucking lost cause. So I don't know what we do for you. But I would say pick a goal. But I'm going to give you some advice on that specific goal and in your context. And then we have somebody who's just come off an accident, snapped their leg, and they're coming back and they want to
we should stick with like severe parachuting accident.
That was if you've crushed yourself and you cannot move for many, many months on end, your protocols for mobility and stretching and strength and range of motion and all that business is going to be much, much different to, say, a seasoned powerlifter who is healthy within the context of powerlifting, can hit depth fine, can do all the sport fine, has no pain and stuff like that. Like the mobility protocol that I'm going to give to that person is going to be vastly, vastly different. So this is a bit of a hard one to talk about. It also draws a lot of people's opinions out, like really polarizing, absolutist opinions out. Like powerlifters love to demonize things that aren't squat, bench, and deadlift ding really heavy. They're like, cardio terrible. Don't do cardio because it'll absolutely kill your gains. And they're just like, yeah, I just don't want to do it. And then you've got don't do clean eating because that'll cause you big mental health problems, and they have merit in that. But it's usually a bias towards like just because they don't want to do that thing.
Don't eat too many vegetables or you'll get depression.
Yeah. So, and then stretching and mobility, I find kind of sometimes falls in this category. Like people love a massively absolutist statement on stretching. They're like, if you're a powerlifter and you do stretching, like you're a complete idiot and you're just completely wasting your time and it's just going to cause you more issues than not and stuff like that, which I think is just hilarious because these people that say these very absolute statements are usually just coincidentally the most immobile person in the room, and they'll be like, nah, I still do my sport fine. I'm still strong. And yeah, sure, they might have a really impressive SBD, but they're also taking like Voltaren every day to keep their fucking inflammation under control. They don't tell you about that. Shoes. They can't like they can't do anything without pain. And they, it's just a struggle to do anything but SBD. So and they're the people that are yelling at you, like, don't stretch. So don't
be like
mobility.
me.
Yeah. So, it's hard because, as with anything, there are pros and cons. There is context. There's goals. Like it's specific to your goal and what you're trying to achieve. And for us to come out and say, yeah, stretching is really good, everyone should do it. Or for us to say, like, stretching is bad, nobody should do it, is way too black and white of a statement. And instead, we should be looking at, like, what is the problem that is holding this person back from achieving their goals? The problem that X person might be facing is that they can't squat to depth. For powerlifting, they can't squat. A massive problem in powerlifting because you're going to get red lights and you're going to fail and bomb, and nobody wants to do that in powerlifting. So that is absolutely a problem that's holding you back from achieving your goals. And mobility or stretching might be one of the many things that could help potentially to solve that particular problem. So, but if you don't have that problem and you're the thing that's the lowest hanging fruit holding you back from hitting your goals is eating a little bit better, sleeping a little bit more at night, then I'm not going to really put a huge amount of effort into telling you to stretch more. And I'm not really going to police it too much. You know what I mean? So
there's most likely bigger fish to fry before you get to stretching. It has a time and a place, and the demands for mobility, the demands of how flexible you are, as you said, change dependent on the goal of the person. But it's never just that one thing. Like, I can guarantee you there's never been a person who's missed squat depth because they haven't stretched enough. There's always multiple factors, and that may come into play as being one of the many solutions that work together with whatever else you're doing to rear a positive result. But as you said, context is everything with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, this is a complete side topic to the actual question at hand, but as we like to do, just go off on complete tangents randomly. But good coaches are aware of the science and aware of what works and what doesn't work and context and stuff like this, but are also aware of people and how people are, and that people have lives, and that people's entire life isn't exactly planned out to what we've written on a spreadsheet. And we're usually quite good at testing and trying things and tinkering with the plan to move in the right direction. Like where I might have somebody who can't squat to depth, I'm going to get them to do usually a handful of things that might solve that issue. I might change their programming up to have more squatting frequently. I might change the loading protocols to give them an anterior load, maybe a heel, to allow them to find a center of mass a little bit better and squat a bit deeper in that way. I might give them a warm-up. If they're not doing a lot of steps throughout the day, I might try and get them to improve their step count through various. I might even throw in some stretching on their off days. I might do a lot of things and then see kind of what works, what doesn't work, and then tinker with the plan moving forward. Because a lot of the time, even if all the science points to, this is good or this is bad in these circumstances, it's still not practical real life. The sign of a good coach is taking the results that have come out of what you've given it, tinkering with them to make them continue to move in the right direction, because sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we think a particular plan is a good plan, and then it just doesn't fucking work for an unknown reason. So problem solving is the sign of a good coach.
And it's hard as well with something like stretching, because it does tie in rather heavily to, it feels pretty decent when you do it. Like, you're doing it, you feel nice, you feel it's just something to do that isn't really heavy squat, bench, or deadlift. And for some people, that's all the justification is needed to be like, hey, I'm just going to do a bit of this, stretch out my bits. Feels all right.
Well, I mean, to get back on track a little bit, I guess, does stretching work? I guess is a good question. Because
depends on what you mean by work. Because, I mean, if anyone says that it doesn't increase range of motion, and I'll put the caveat transiently, because it doesn't stay around forever, but if you stretch something...
It doesn't stay around forever, but it also doesn't disappear 1 minute later like some people think.
The available range of that joint will increase if you stretch it. That's... Yep. I don't think anyone can argue with that. Whether or not that range we have control over, which I guess would be when you bring in the differentiation between active and passive range of motion. That's yet to be said. Just because you can instantly access that range doesn't necessarily mean it's useful or usable range. But it definitely adds something, and no one can say it doesn't, because there's a body of research to say, hey, you stretch this bit, that bit will move a little bit further than it did before.
Yeah, if your goal is to do the splits, I'm not going to come to you and say, like, don't stretch. That's a horrible idea. It does nothing. It clearly does something. Like, if your goal is to do the splits, do it. But most of the people listening are powerlifters, so not as useful for our particular goals. But you bring up a good point there, and I think the road that we head down with this is that stretching or like low-level kind of rehabby kind of drills that people picture as like mobility exercises and stuff like that, they're usually unloaded. And I'm not saying that unloaded doesn't have any efficacy. It definitely does. There are definitely different mechanisms of this stuff and how it all works. I'm not going to go into it because it's not actually going to be useful for people, I don't think. But I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is that these things need to be progressed in a logical manner, just like you would progress your exercises. It's not always about adding load. It's about adding exposure in different ways, duration, all this different stuff. It is about changing how it's loaded. So giving people, if somebody can't squat to depth, for a certain, like I said before, give them a front-loaded, heel-elevated squat. They can probably sit on the floor a lot of the time. So giving them something like that and teaching them to control that range of motion might be a really good exercise. We can go a step further back from that again, depending on who they are. If they still can't do that very well, there are even less loadable, more manageable positions that the person can access that range of motion and build upon that range, control within that range of motion. Well, and sometimes you need to take absolutely baby steps with it. I think in the pain episode, it's kind of like that. In the pain episode, we said, hey, if you can't do squats without your knees hurting, go just step back in loadability and find exercises that you can do that are still as loadable as possible, and do that, and build competency there, and then slowly work your way back up potentially. It's the same thing with this range of motion thing. If you want to improve range of motion, if you can't do a straight overhead press, like most powerlifters can't, the answer isn't probably just banging that out and just continuously. Maybe lower, like hit an incline press, so you kind of like where like the incline is, where you can control it, where you can have good technique, good range, all that good stuff. Things don't hurt. And then maybe very incrementally over a longer period of time, slowly increase that incline until you can get more and more overhead and build more control there, whilst simultaneously maybe you're doing stretches and or like, you know, the more mobility drills that people picture when I say mobility drills, like the, you know, lying on the floor and, you know, like thoracic rotation, thoracic extension type little mobility drills. I don't think they're useless either. I think like layer them on top and use them prior to the sessions, use that in between sessions, whatever.
For me, the way that I'd like to view it is generally you have giving someone access to a range and then give someone faculty over that range. And to answer the question, does that mean unloaded stretching is useless? No, because you can't gain faculty over a range until you actively gain access to it. Because metaphors are my favorite thing ever. It'd be the difference between you have this one's going to be a good one. You have a gun and a gun case. Yep, gun and a gun case. Gun case is locked. The unloaded drills are letting you open the gun case, but just because you open the gun case doesn't mean you know how to shoot. Yeah. So once you start loading those ranges, you've gained access to
so many holes in that analogy, but we're going to run with it anyway.
I think it works. It gives you access to what's inside, gives you access to the range, but you can't competently use that range until you practice with it a little bit. Put in some reps, put in some load, or go shoot some targets. I think that's all right.
I get what you're saying.
I'd love to hear the holes you can poke in it, to be honest.
I just think there are probably more to it, but I think it's a good basic way of saying it. I was hoping that you'd go down the crawdad route again, to be honest.
I can. So
I had a lot of crawdad feedback that I read. A lot of people love.
So, for example, you go to the local swamp and you catch yourself a crawdad. doesn't mean you know how to cook it. So you can get your hands on that crawdad, you can get access to that range, but then to understand how to cook that crawdad, it requires a little bit of extra work. You got to go look at some cookbooks, look at some crawdad seasoning, buy a good quality skillet, you know. All those steps after catching the crawdad are your loaded drills. Anything before catching the crawdad, like, you know, getting into the swamp, actually grabbing the bastard, that's your unloaded stuff. Is that better? Okay. Does that resonate with you more?
No, I think the first one was better. I think that just confused everybody even more.
Crawdads! Crawdads!
Oh, God.
Why do you call them crawdads?
Crayfish or crawfish, whatever.
Crayfish.
I mean, say crayfish.
Crayfish.
No, say crawdad. Say it.
Crawdad.
No, say it with the
accent.
Crawdad.
Yeah. Which was more fun?
What was more fun?
Crawdad.
Yeah. Why do you? That's only because of the accent. You can go like crayfish.
See, it's not as good.
Yeah.
It's not as good.
Sounds like a Pokemon, like crayfish.
Crayfish, you splash! Wow, we have really
Crawdad
derailed
sounds
that.
like the evolution to crayfish. Like,
Crawdad, I choose you. Crayfish, you splash! Okay, where were we? What were we fucking saying?
I've no idea. We got
loaded, unloaded, stretching.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that. Oh God. Oh man, well, I completely lost topic, but we'll just pick up at an absolutely random spot here and talk about squatting to depth. And go with, I think, yeah, a powerlifter talking about mobility is confusing because, like I said before at the start, that SBD, the competition variations of SBD that we do, as in like a low bar squat aim, which is aimed to lift the most amount of load through and use as much muscle throughout the body to do so, not focused so much on joint range of motion that much, but just getting the hip crease below the top of the knee. Just ticking that box of requirement is like all we care about. Like literally just.
The bare minimum.
And then, like, you can stand, and some people do, like, fucking super duper wide. You can stand super narrow. You can have your toes flared wherever you want. You can do whatever you want that helps you achieve that. You just need to get under that. So the goal of powerlifting is to squat to depth. And just because your hips are quote-unquote tight, sitting there like, oh, fuck, my hips are tight, it doesn't mean that you can't squat to depth. Like, I don't know... I know a lot of powerlifters who hit depth comfortably, who are fantastic powerlifters at the top of the game, who just all they do is complain about how tight their hips are all the time. And it's like, so I think it's a bad way to view it as like, if you can't squat to depth, I just need to improve like my hip mobility and get my hips less tight, quote unquote tight, because it's usually not as simple as that, right?
Like you can't mobilize something that you've just spent the last 3 years cultivating tightness in. Like if the position that makes your squat really strong puts your hip flexors in a position where they're shortened more often than they're lengthened, they're going to be pretty fucking tight. And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing at all. Like the goal of powerlifting is literally to like get tight in a sense. Like powerlifters will sit there and yell at each other, get tight, you know, hold that tightness, squeeze your back. You know, you think you're like you're like your shoulder blades are touching each other, and yet your coach is still sitting there yelling at you, like, nah, fucking tighter, man. Like, squeeze those shoulder blades even tighter than that. Like,
then they get home and say, wonder why I'm so tight.
You do that for 5 years, and then you're like, oh man, my fucking shoulder blades are a bit tight.
My favorite one is when someone fails a squat and they say, oh, I just lost tightness in the hole. Then the next post is, I feel so tight all the time. It's like, no, you never lost for tightness. You just fucked it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so to say that like this tightness, whether it's in the hips, shoulders, big toe, whatever, is the reason you can't squat to depth is a bit of a simplification of it. And I'm not saying, again, that mobility or doing stretches, doing these little drills and that isn't part of the answer to do it, but there's probably part of a multifactorial, bigger picture thing to it as well. Another good example that I say to a lot of people is that like somebody who's super tight who through their feels tightness, subjective tightness through their hip flexors, will come into the gym and do like 30 seconds of, a couch stretch, like a Bulgarian split squat type isometric position, and hold that, feel a bit of a stretch there and go like, okay, yep, my job's done here. Crack their fingers, twist their back a couple of times, a couple of leg swings, ready to squat. Done, fixed. But as you said, oftentimes this person they don't move at all throughout the day. They do like 1,000 steps a day. They are bigger than what they should be, like whether that's muscle or fat. Like they're just there's more tissue on their frame than what you probably should be. Big crawdad fixed. Just got too much shell on you. And then, past injuries, all this different stuff. They don't train for range at all, ever. And then I think this 30-second stretch is going to just undo all of that and multiple years of that. It's just not the case. So yeah.
Well, even
usually
if you look at it from the perspective of just not using the word tight, just say shortened or lengthened, I think that clears up a hell of a lot as well. Because if you have somebody whose hips are tight, you could swap that out with your hip flexors are probably short. So just pulling on either end, like we said, stretching will provide a transient or a short-term lengthening of those tissues, but they're always going to return to the position that you trained them in and load them in more frequently.
The problem with that is that if you're chronically lengthened as well, it also feels tight. So like the subjective feeling of tightness is similar to
something's
the
long
pain
or tight.
In that it's something that. Sure, I'm not going to completely throw that data in the bin and say that's completely irrelevant, but I'm also not going to place a ton of value in that subjective feeling of tightness. Like we're going to look at controlled measures. If it's in a physiotherapist type setting, then maybe they're going to do table testing and test ranges and what you have passive and active control over range of, and then. But in my case, as a coach, I'm going to more just look at their squat and can they hold position through the joints to get in the shapes that I want them to get into? Like, can they get to the bottom of a squat and hold their hips from tucking under or whatever, their feet from caving or whatever it is I'm looking at? Can they do the thing that I want them to do in the way that I deem, correct or efficient or whatever? Is really the aim of the game here. The aim of the game isn't to feel loose, I guess, is the opposite to tight.
If you get under a squat bar and you feel loose and limber, you're probably terrified more than anything else.
Yeah, go back and, if that's the case, go back to our warm-up episode and do some of those warm-up drills to get you tight, feeling a little bit tighter. Kind of goes against everything. Yeah, so your body is tight for a reason. Your body doesn't just hate you. Your body. You don't just wake up and you go oh fuck, my hips are tight. I guess somebody's placed a witch has placed a curse on me that's led to hip tightness. It's it's something to do with your lifestyle, your stress, how you move, how you're performing your exercises, to what intensities. All these, it's so many different factors that are coming into it. So I wouldn't rely on that subjective feeling. And you'd also have to look at, is that actually a problem? Is my hamstrings feeling a little bit tight actually hindering me towards my goals? So stopping you from getting to the bottom of a squat, stopping you from getting in a good deadlift start position, whatever it is. If it's not, who cares? Probably leave that.
Let sleeping lions lay until it starts to hurt. Once it starts to hurt, then maybe it's time to take an intervention. But
a lot of these mobility stuff as well is they're solved just by more variance over time as well. Like if your program consists of literally just barbell squats, barbell bench press, barbell deadlifts, and you just do that all year round, and just heavy all the time, then I can say there's a fairly good chance that you're going to end up with maybe not problems at first. You're going to get really good at those movements and it's going to seem like you're making tons of progress, but then down the line you're probably going to run into a couple of issues depending on exactly you've gone about it, but most people, they're going to push too hard, end up with problems, and it's going to
like
cause
people
more problems.
pretend overuse injuries don't exist. Like you'll hear the term overuse injury thrown around very frequently in field sports and more traditional
Yeah, well, it's
sports.
just a broad term. Yeah.
Yeah, but no one really mentions it like, hey, if you only do low bar squats for a while, you may rack up something because you've overused that pattern and overtaxed those joints.
Yeah, especially if you don't understand progressive loading. Another, I know we're just going in complete tangents everywhere here, and it's I don't know how useful it is, but we'll keep going.
For reference, we have a cute little list that we like say we're going to follow this list, and then we like chop and change between the start and the end multiple times.
Absolutely never follow it, ever. Another one which I see is that one of the really good things about powerlifting is that anybody can kind of compete. Like if you can do a squat, bench, and deadlift to depth, you don't need to qualify for powerlifting meets. You can rock up and you can just lift and you can compete on the same stage as everyone else. And it's, it's pretty easy to get into it. And I think that's a really positive thing to the sport in many ways. But it also means that a lot of the people that are competing they come from backgrounds that maybe aren't really athletic. That aren't really, maybe they've been sitting on their butt for 10 years and they decide, cool, powerlifting seems like a pretty good goal. And I'm not saying that it isn't. I would absolutely love to see more people in powerlifting, so don't get me wrong there. But a lot of these people will come in from, like I said, just absolutely a completely detrained state and then go like, okay, cool, so competition squats, yeah? And then you're like cool,
straight into it.
Hang on a second. Yeah, absolutely. If you want to get good at that particular exercise, you're probably going to have to do it. But it's where a lot of these issues can come from, is because you're just, like, let's face it, not ready for that. Like we probably should step you up in different variations that allow you to control that range and control your body a little bit better, and slowly, progressively over time, load those patterns and progress. So I feel like a big issue with a lot of the mobility issues that a lot of people have is from just going from sitting on a couch for 10 years to going straight into low bar squats, competition bench presses, and competition deadlifts, as opposed to slowly working their way there. And I think it's why also you'll see that a lot of the powerlifting champions come from other sports as well, like people that were track athletes in school, or maybe they played footy, or maybe they come from a different sport where they've kind of built that base level of competency, and then they jump in and they're ready for competition lifts. And because that's what we all do, they're a step ahead of everyone else, and they don't have to make all the mistakes, and they exceed. Whereas if you just look up powerlifting program and you haven't trained in 10 years and you jump into it, it might not be the right program for you, but it's very generally, it's hard to say that you shouldn't do that as well. You get what I mean?
Because there's that piece of body awareness and proprioception as well. Like as we keep going back to the example of squat depth, it's not necessarily just do the joints in the movement have access to the range to end up in the final result. It's also, are you able to neurologically control that pattern and use the right tissues to place yourself down there? Like I think in however many people that I've coached, I've only ever had one client with, like, say, a genuine limitation in ankle dorsiflexion, and he knows who he is, and it is real bad, like legitimately. I think the
from
dorsiflexion
a previous injury, or
yeah, the ankle's all sort of jacked up. But I think like the baseline is like 5 or 6 centimeters of forward knee travel, whatever it is. He gets like 1. It's like it doesn't go forward at all.
Yeah.
He has like a night brace that he puts his foot in to try and like crank it back. But out of everyone that I've coached, only one person has a genuine limitation in ankle dorsiflexion that impacts his squatting. Everyone else, it's, as you said, more so proprioception, more so, hey, can you actually do the skill? Can you get down there and then get back up? As opposed to saying, oh, nah, it's just my tight hips. It's just the pieces that I'm blaming, as opposed to saying, hey, maybe I just need to get better at the thing to be able to get down lower.
Yep. Yeah. But it's scaling the activity to where you're at. If people can understand that, then you're not going to have near as much of a problem with quote unquote mobility, and you won't have to do a lot of this stuff that are put out there on the internet. You're going to run into a lot less problems. That's all I had to talk about. Let me just check our list that we don't use at all. Yep, ticked all those boxes. Great.
To round it out in like to round out what we just said in 40 minutes in like 2 or 3 sentences, stretching is not bad. Stretching can be beneficial. If stretching feels good, you can stretch.
Absolutely.
But stretching probably won't fix all your problems.
It's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox.
Throw it out in the bucket.
I think I had a problem with the video, but it's all right.
Yeah,
we'll wrap up.
you're frozen. You're frozen.
I'm
but
frozen.
Still here.
That's all right. That's all right. We're at the end. It's all good. Yeah. So, it's certainly not bad. Has its place. Has its purpose. It's a tool in toolboxes. Good coaches solve problems, like I said, and it might be one of those tools that can solve that problem. Absolutely implement it. See if it works. If it doesn't work, throw it out. If it works, great. Keep doing it. I know that's super general advice, but it's honestly what we do. Cool. All right. I'll leave it there. If you have, again, any feedback like Charlotte, who asked this great question, jump on the website, NexusPerformance.com.au, jump onto the podcast one, scroll down a bit, and you'll see the form.
Red hot.
Cool.
Catch you guys next time. Thank you for listening to Nexus Unloaded. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned on today's podcast, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gym services. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NexusPerformance.Aus for any updates on what we are currently doing. See you all in the next episode.